Hi everyone, welcome to Read with an Engineer. My objective for this series is to introduce to you and share with you the books that I really enjoyed reading as an engineer and as a person who is interested in science and history. And today I'm going to review the best-selling novel Pompeii by Robert Harris, who is one of my, let's say, top 5 favorite authors, with many books that has a direct relevance to engineering and science. And I certainly will introduce some of those books in future episodes. But in this one, Harris showcases the social and economic and political conditions of the Roman Empire at the time when the Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii exploded. And as you expect, the book has a heavy dose of scientific and engineering elements in it. A very interesting aspect of the novel is that it uniquely discussed the volcanoes in general and the Vesuvius volcano in particular, not through typical geological observation, but by following the volcano through water flow. And this is perhaps is the most unique aspect of this novel. The plot of the novel is in southern Italy around the Bay of Naples during 40 hours before and 8 hours after the volcanic eruption on August 23rd and 24th, 79 AD. And it is extremely rich in providing scientific and engineering accounts of the events leading to the eruption and the consequences after the eruption. The author smartly integrated the events related to volcano eruption to his plot that has all the regular elements of a typical novel. But before we briefly review the novel, let's have a quick discussion on why this particular volcano is so captivating for us. After all, Earth has witnessed many volcanic eruptions throughout history. In fact, according to the US Geological Survey, the USGS, there are roughly 50 to 60 volcanic eruptions annually worldwide. So this really averages out to about one eruption every week, somewhere in the world. However, regardless of all these eruptions that has happened throughout the history, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in southern Italy in 79 AD is the one that remains the most well-known volcano even after 2000 years. Certainly, this is not the largest volcanic eruption in the history. Even it is not the deadliest one, but it is the one that has captivated public, scientists, and artists alike for centuries. The reason might be the fact that it destroyed one of the jewels of Roman Republic in its peak glory. Or it might be because of its enormous social, economic, and even military impact on the known ancient world. And as such, many movies, documentaries, literary books, and even artistic expressions have been created on this event or inspired by it. Now, back to our review of the book. The main character of the story in the novel is Marcus Attilius Primus, and he is an ambitious, honest, incorruptible young engineer who was appointed as the aquarius of Aqua Augusta. Aquarius was a title that was given to an engineer who was in charge of aqueduct that transferred water to the Mediterranean coast of southern Italy. And this particular Aquarius was appointed after his predecessor mysteriously disappeared. Now we know that aqueducts were very popular in Roman Empire to transfer water. But this particular aqueduct, Aqua Augusta, was the most complex and the longest aqueduct of its time and provided fresh water for 250,000 inhabitants of Pompeii and 8 other cities, some of whom were the richest citizens of Roman Empire, who temporarily lived in the region to escape the hot summer of Rome. His appointment was unexpected and was due to disappearance of his predecessor under mysterious circumstances. And the unfortunate young engineer had to deal with crisis after crisis in first days of his job. Fountains were failing in the cities throughout the region, and he needed to identify where the problem was in the 60-mile long aqueduct and fix it as soon as possible. The author used this mission to provide accurate and detailed explanation of advancement in hydraulic and other engineering fields in ancient Roman Republic. The discussion on design, construction, and maintenance of aqueducts are remarkably informative. Particularly the engineering presentation of baths as the focal point of social life in Roman society is very interesting. Moreover, the author provided an insight to the corruption in social and economic structure of the Roman society. And all these elements are seamlessly integrated into the story in a way that readers do not even recognize that they are dealing with these complicated and seemingly boring topics. For example, the author created a scene where the contaminated water by sulfur due to volcanic activities killed many fish in a fish farm. The slave in charge of the farm was blamed for this and brutally executed in the false accusation of negligence by his owner, who was a corrupt prominent businessman and a former slave. And while the main character, the engineer, was trying to save the slave, he got emotionally involved with the owner's daughter. Obviously, I don't want to spoil the plot and destroy the enjoyment of the reading the novel, but I just wanted to give you how smartly the author integrated engineering and science to the social fabric of Roman society while making it interesting and enjoyable to follow. Interestingly, the author wrote a screenplay based on this novel for the director Roman Polanski for a very elaborate, expensive movie, but eventually the project was cancelled. Also, Harris stated in an interview that the plot for this novel was inspired by Polanski's film Chinatown, which dealt with actually corruption in the management of water systems in Los Angeles in 1930s. Who knows, at some point I may even review some movies that I enjoyed watching as an engineer, but not for now. Anyway, in summary, if you are interested in fiction novels and advancement in ancient technologies, or you have any interest in geology and volcanology, this book should be placed on top of your to read list. But before I finish, probably it's not a bad idea to just briefly discuss about Robert Harris, the author of this novel. Because as I said, he has a special taste for historical novels with a very heavy dose of science and engineering. And I will review some of his other books here as well later on. So Robert Harris, born in 1957, is an English novelist and former political journalist and television reporter. All his novels have a historical background, although not all of the novels have engineering or science related topics or elements. Some of his early books were about the Second World War. For example, in Fatherland, which was published in 1992, the world was pictured as if Nazis have won the war. In his second novel, Enigma, the setting was again Second World War, where the Allies broke German's secret military code. In his 1998 novel, Archangel, his main character, a historian, hunted for Stalin's secret diary in Russia. And all these three novels were made into movies. His next three novels were Pompeii, Imperium, and Conspirata, which were published between 2003 and 2009, were all set in ancient Roman Empire. And generally, these two themes, Roman Empire and Second World War, are his favorite topics, and many of his later books were also dealing with these two topics. For example, in Dictator in 2015, and particularly in V2 that was published in 2020. This latter one, V2, is of particular interest for me, and I will review it later in a different episode because it deals with the development of V2 rockets in Germany on one side, and how the British were trying to counter the impact of the rockets on the other side. Some of his recent books were on more contemporary issues, such as corruption in the modern political system, as in Ghost, published in 2007, and Computer Takeover in the Fear Index, published in 2011. And many of his recent books has made into very high profile movies, such as The Ghost and the latest one, Conclave, that was published in 2016, and the movie based on the novel was released in 2024. But again, beside this novel Pompeii that we just discussed, V2 is my favorite, and we will have a discussion on that later on. This concludes my review of the best-selling novel Pompeii by Robert Harris. Until the next book that we review, please keep reading and learning. Thank you. Bye.